Hello again. We are Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 here to preview Georgia's road trip to Texas, 6:30 Central on ABC. BetOnline has this as Texas by 3.5 with an over-under of 56.5 as of Monday morning. That makes for a predicted final score of Texas 30, Georgia 27. My model favors Texas by 8. Boy, that's a big discrepancy between the line and what the computers are telling us. Anyway, Georgia comes off I'd say a disappointing win over Mississippi State, a 34.5-point favorite, which it wins by 10. Texas still is yet to be tested. It's also yet to face an offense like Georgia can bring. The Longhorns, the only unbeaten team, number one team in the country. This will be a dandy, Chase.
It will be. I mean, this is one of those games we've been looking forward to all season long, and Texas playing really good football right now. Georgia got the win against Mississippi State. Win's a win. Whether it looked good or not, I thought their offense looked really good. Carson Beck continues to turn the ball over, which I think is interesting, and we'll get to that. But overall, an exciting matchup in Austin. Again, one of these games we just look forward to. This is now the reality of the SEC that we get these playoff type matchups in the regular season.
All right, let's go through the stats, which I increasingly put less relevance on and with more of what my eyes tell me, but here they are regardless. When Georgia has the ball, the Bulldogs averaging just 33.5 points a game. That doesn't even seem right on 66 snaps, a 1.5% turnover rate. Georgia will throw it 58% of the time, where it averages 8.2 yards a pass. It gets 5 yards per rushing play for 6.9 yards per snap. Texas's defense, one of the best in the country, is allowing 6.3 points a game on just 62 snaps, a 2.9% turnover rate. Teams will run it 51% of the time against the Longhorns. They average 3.9 yards per rushing play, 3.5 yards per passing play. That is outstanding for 3.7 yards per snap on the whole. Look, Georgia's Carson Beck just has not been the Carson Beck we're used to. There's been more turnovers, and Texas is a defense that's got depth, it's got pass rush, it's got playmakers, it's got a little bit of everything. I don't think either team will have faced what it will see on the other side of the ball like it will see in this game.
Yeah, you're right. And Carson Beck, 5 interceptions on the season, was kind of surprising. You weren't expecting those type numbers from him. But as far as yardage, incredible, 1,818 yards. He's thrown 15 touchdowns on 142 completions out of 209 attempts. So and he had a great day Saturday against Mississippi State. So their offense is clicking, as long as they don't turn the ball over. And then he's got guys to catch the ball, and Dylan Bell and Dominic Lovett and Arian Smith, all guys who contribute greatly offensively. And then Trevor Etienne, you get him involved, and he's great running the football, as is Branson Robinson. So, I mean, this Georgia team, they're great offensively, and they're facing again a defense in Texas who is just they're good. I mean, they're good at taking teams and exploiting issues. And have they faced an offense like Georgia? This is going to be the best offense I think they've seen. And so I'm interested to see how they react to that. But just from what we've seen from Texas so far, just really impressive with the way their defense plays.
How concerned are we with Georgia's offense? Because you've now had 2 receivers who are out, one out for the year and another one suspended due to off-field issues. You've had some injuries at running back. You had Tate Ratledge out. And you look at what they've got to block. Ethan Burke, Trey Moore, Alfred Collins, Baron Sorrell's been just outstanding. Anthony Hill, their middle linebacker, a star. They got Malik Muhammad. They got Andrew Mukubka in the secondary. I just think that I'd like to see Georgia with a little bit more parts available for this matchup. Yeah. Maybe is a good way to put it. And look, I say that. I think Georgia did the right thing cutting bait on those guys, or at least suspending one and cutting bait on the other. But from a football standpoint, it is not what we might have thought we would see coming into the year.
Yeah, you're right. And they've been faced with those issues, and the team has responded well even through them. But getting more guys involved and I think will be big for Georgia. And again, you need, when you face a defense like Texas, I mean, you've got to be working on all cylinders, and I think Georgia needs to get guys involved, and they need to be on their best game. And we saw them fall behind big to Alabama. They were able to get themselves back in it, but that's not going to happen all the time. They can't dig themselves a hole, especially offensively, and turn the ball over like they did against Alabama.
All right, before we look at the other side of the matchup, we remind you our channel brought to you by BetOnline, which is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting, every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA to political props. Got an election here in a month. There's a lot of betting on that too, Chase. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. I'm going to give you some season stats. But first, I'm going to give you some stats on Georgia's defense recently that I think are maybe more important than the season stats I'm about to give you. And again, I think stats almost become less relevant as we go forward, but I think these are relevant. Georgia allowed 6.1 yards per play to Mississippi State. And I know playing with the lead the whole time, probably getting some subs in. I get that, but Georgia's always had depth, and that's never been an issue before. 5.8 against Auburn, 8.4 yards per play against Alabama. Now, the first three games, 3.6 yards per play allowed against Clemson, 2.8 against Texas Tech, 3.9 against Kentucky. But it feels like Alabama really exposed Georgia on some things that just haven't gotten right since. Stats on the year. All right, for Texas's offense, Texas is scoring 43.2 points a game on 69 snaps, 1.9% turnover rate. So that's a little concerning. You'd like to see that a little bit lower. Texas runs at 52% of the time, 5.4 yards per rushing play, 9.2 per passing play, which adjusts for sacks and counts those against your passing plays. So Quinn Ewers and company just phenomenal throwing the ball. 7.2 yards per play on the whole. Now here's what Georgia gives up. 60 plays a game, 17.1 points, 1.4% turnover rate. Georgia really not a defense that forces turnovers under Kirby Smart. They just stop you other ways. Teams run at 52% of the time against Georgia, 4.4 per rushing play, 6.1 per passing play, 5.2 total. That pass defense has been a little leaky for Georgia compared to what it generally is.
Yeah, and you'll see. I feel like Texas, they're working on all cylinders right now offensively, and this is going to have to be a good defensive game plan for Georgia facing what they're going to face. They haven't, Alabama is good offensively, and they made some big plays on Georgia, but I feel like Texas just is so consistent offensively compared to other teams in the SEC, and so I think Texas, again, with Quinn Ewers, they look really good, and Georgia has some, they have some weapons that they can use defensively. And yeah, there's just a lot of youth in the secondary as well for Georgia, and Alabama exploited that. I think that Texas is going to try to expose that as well, and so I think this is an interesting side of the matchup just to see what Georgia can do to slow them down, because teams are having a hard time slowing down this Texas offense.
Well, and here's the problem with that. I think this is the deepest team probably in the country. We talked about it on defense, but on offense, you got to worry about Isaiah Bond. You got to worry about Silas Bolden, at least in the punt return game, and maybe in the receiving game. You got Matthew Golden. You got Ryan Wingo. Just so much athleticism. At tight end, they got Gunnar Helm. And oh, by the way, you got a first-round left tackle in Kelvin Banks protect the best quarterback room in the country between Ewers and Manning. You got a running back room that, Wisner, those guys have been producing. I just think this is it's like Texas is Georgia-ing Georgia here. I mean, we just all the depth, all the parts, both sides of the ball. It feels like Texas has kind of become. And I'm not burying Georgia yet. Don't get me wrong. This is a compliment to what Georgia's been and what Texas is becoming. But I look at this team, and it just feels like a Georgia feel to that offense with just so many guys who can make plays, and not one guy you can just take away and say, all right, that solves it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the depth. I think that's what stands out about Texas is they're so deep in so many different positions, kind of like Georgia's been. And so, yeah, I think Texas is in a really good situation right now. There's a reason they're the number one team in the country. And, I think that they're in a position where with all the depth that they can, again, at quarterback, we saw Quinn Ewers go down. In years past, it would have been questionable on who was coming in at quarterback. When you got a guy like Arch Manning who can lead you, behind Quinn Ewers, then you're in a good spot offensively. And so the depth for Texas, I feel like, is huge this year.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Jaydon Blue or Jerrick Gibson. Both those guys over 200 yards rushing. So not a lot of teams probably got two backs that are over, or three backs over that at this point. But that's kind of what Texas has got. All right, let's get to picks and why. Chase, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Longhorns in this one. I feel like Georgia can challenge them in some areas, but look, Texas is just playing so good right now. I don't see anybody stopping them at this point, the way they're playing. And Georgia, again, has had some questions defensively, and Texas has a really good offense. I just see Texas being able to move the ball really well, and I'm going to pick Texas until they prove otherwise. I like what I'm seeing from the Longhorns right now.
If I'd picked this a week ago, I think I would have taken Georgia, just because I feel like Texas is probably going to take a loss somewhere, although I'm starting to doubt that, because like we talked about Nick Saban's teams, like he only had, I think, two teams that went unbeaten. So you don't ever know where it's coming from, but it's usually coming. And I thought Georgia had the best chance to do that. But I just watched Georgia, and it doesn't feel Georgia-like at times. We went over some of those defensive numbers. We saw Kirby Smart, who preaches discipline, shove a South Carolina player, or not South Carolina, a Mississippi State player last week. Like I don't. That one kind of got buried, but I don't know. I feel like something's off. Now, look, having said that, man, they got talent. They got a quarterback who's done some big things, and it could be the game that they have the Georgia coming out party and will say, hey, we should have seen it coming. But I just feel like I've got more questions about Georgia than I do Texas at this point. I will take the Longhorns at home in what should be one of the games of the year in college football. We'll talk about it later. Best way to get that, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and that'll help you know if you hit notifications when we go live. We'll do a wrap-up Saturday night. We cover baseball, football, basketball year-round, and we reach millions doing it. Caroline.smith@southeastern14.com is a good way to reach out to us about advertising. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching Southeastern 16, presented by BetOnline.